All right, I think we can begin. I'd like to start by welcoming you to the second legislative Crackerbarrel session here at the Vigo County Public Library. I'm Ron Dromore. I'll be your MC for today. If we could start by standing and doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, we're so glad that you're here on this very cold Saturday to hear and discuss with our legislators. And in attendance today, we have Senator John Ford representing the 38th District, Tanya Path, representing the 43rd District. Representative Bruce Borders is on his way. He will be here shortly. He's representing the 45th District. And also today, Representative Robert Bob Heaton representing the 46th District. We are so glad that all of our legislators are here today. Alan Morrison will not be in attendance today. And we are going to start by hearing from our legislators. Before we do, we just want to read this. We read this every time. Even in disagreement, respectful communication and behavior are required. Yelling, using profanity, and speaking abusively are certainly not allowed. So let's just hop right into it. We're going to hear from our legislators, just to kind of brief introduction and some things that they're working on in the State House. And we're going to give them, I believe we have 2 minutes per legislator to start things out. And I'm feeling generous today. Who wants to start?
I'll get over with.
All right, Representative Pat.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you, as always, for coming out and listening to what's going on in the State House. A couple updates. We are working on a housing bill, which is nice. It's 1005. And the idea is it's supposed to support rural development and get some money over to rural communities to help with the housing crisis. One bill, 1034, that I'm actually a co-author on, I like to say that, is income tax exemption for military pay. So if you're active duty and you sign up and you go, you're from Indiana and you go sign and you're in active duty, a lot of soldiers, our Hoosiers will put down other states of residency because they don't pay income tax in those states. So this is a bill going through which would be if you're military active duty, you will not pay income tax, which I think is a great bill. 1290, earned income tax credit. It increases the state's earned income tax credit from 10% to 12%. Again, we have a lot of people struggling, and this is the least we can do, in my opinion. And then the big topic this week has been school boards. Should they be partisan or not? So we've had, I was in elections this week, and we had a very spirited debate whether you should have to put an R or D behind your name in order to run for school board. So if someone asks about that, I'll go into that later, but I'm going to be out of time here. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Path. Representative Heaton, would you like to go? There you go.
Okay, thanks for everyone coming today. Sorry, missed last month. I committed to my granddaughters that I'd take her to the IU Wisconsin game last month, so I couldn't get out of that. But anyway, so. But thanks for being here. Appreciate it. As Representative Path and I, we're on the Ways and Means Committee, and that's the committee that deals with the budget. And on Thursday after session, Tanya, we were there, to about 6 o'clock, I think it was. But that's part of it, though. But it was good. When you've got a budget, a 2-year budget of about $38 billion, you do get a lot of requests pertaining to that. And speaking of that, I have a bill that deals with the funding. It's called the Department of Child Services Stabilization Workforce Bill, and that's about a $47 million ask, and that was discussed behind the scenes with Chairman Thompson in Ways and Means. He and I have been talking about that. So it deals with a lot of these providers like Gibault. You've got in Delaware County in the Muncie area, there's it's called agency called the Youth Opportunity Centers, and they service a lot of the kids and so forth as far as that goes. And, you know, some of these workers for these organizations, they're getting paid $15 an hour. And with all what they have to do, they need to be compensated a lot more than that, because they're leaving that type of profession and going to maybe a fast food restaurant or something, get paid even more than $15 an hour. And so it's something that needs to be done, and there's a lot of need out there for that. So, but there's some other bills in the process that we're working on, and we're about two. I see your sign. Can I speak a little bit since he's not here? Maybe you can kind of give me a little.
Yeah, take his time. Take his time.
I think that's probably fine, yes.
But anyway, but there's a lot of bills going through the process right now, and we've got about 2 weeks to go. And so, and then our bills would go over to the Senate, and the Senate bills is going to come over to us, and then about that last two weeks in April, as some people will say, that's when really when the session starts, because there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of negotiations and so forth, and it's really it's good. But it's when you've got the money that we're looking at, there's a lot of need, and I tell people, you know, come at us with one hand out instead of two, but I get it. So, but we get into we'll talk later maybe about the Ready grants that's available that we have. A lot of, I work with the colleges and so forth. We listened to Purdue and IU and ISU and USI and Ball State recently and Ivy Tech about their needs that they have. And so a lot of good discussion out there, but we'll keep dealing with that. And so again, appreciate everybody being here and look forward to the dialogue that we'll have today.
Thank you, Representative Heaton. And finally, at least for now, let's hear from Senator John Ford.
Well, good morning, and good to see a nice crowd here today. So as you know, Bob said, we're coming close to the what we call the flip, or we'll send all the bills over to the House. So we're kind of getting into crunch time the next 2 weeks. If your bill doesn't get heard, it's dead. I've been able to move a few bills that I've been working on for a few years out of the Senate into the House. One is establishing a cancer research fund and allowing taxpayers, if they get a refund, to contribute some of that money or all of that money to the Cancer Research Fund. And then hopefully I've got a request that we throw some money from the budget into this fund. I've been working on this for 3 years, so first time I got it past the Senate. And then TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, increasing the eligibility and the cash payments, and got that out of the Senate this week unanimously. So hopefully we'll have a good opportunity in the House to hear that. Another bill that I'm really struggling with is I want the state to provide lawyers to children in foster care. We're one of 8 states at this point that doesn't provide this service to kids in foster care, and the committee chairman apparently isn't going to hear the bill, so I may have to wait and come back next year. And then, like Bob, working on higher education. We're changing the higher education funding formula this year and trying to make it a little more unique to each university. So the mission set, like, so for example, Indiana State, first generation folks is a goal of Indiana State. So we want them to be able to use that as a goal setting for funding performance or funding, of that. So again, look forward to good questions. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And when Representative Borders gets here, we'll try to give him some time to kind of give some things on what he's working on. But for right now, we would like to recognize our sponsors for making this event possible. First and foremost, the Vigo County Public Library, the League of Women Voters of Vigo County Teachers Association, Vigo County Taxpayers Association, Greater Terre Haute branch of the NAACP, and Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. Could we all give them a round of applause for making this event possible? All right, so we're going to invite our sponsors, if they would, and I believe some of them have already started lining up back there to ask questions. And a little different this time, the microphone is right by the camera instead of in front, so that those watching at home can still see everything even when you're asking your question. We're going to ask that our sponsors take 1 minute to ask the question and about 1.5 minutes response from legislators. And we're asking sponsors to ask one question for your representation, and then if you have a follow-up question or a different question, we're asking that you get in line for the public portion of the comment. So if you could start by saying your name and your affiliation. And
Good morning. I'm Sylvester Edwards, president of the Greater Terre Haute branch of the NACP, and Representative Heaton. A friend of mine, I was standing in line, and I said to the people, no meat on my food, and my buddy said to him, I want his meat, since I had to pay for it anyway. Well, thank you. That was just a relax. But anyway, fellow citizens, and happy Black History Month. The question I have to ask. You know, we just got through saying the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag, and this is something that is dear to us as far as full citizenship. And the hate crime bill, you may have seen last night, channel WTHI interview of what hate crime. But it's not fully finished yet. There are certain classes or categories like 51% of our population are female, and that's not included in the hate crime bill. 30% of the senior, our citizenship seniors are not. What I'm saying is, when are we going to wind up finishing the protection of all of our citizens up under the 14th Amendment? If it comes back into session, hopefully, because I think it hadn't been there since 2019. So would you vote for it fully and make sure that every citizen, as we say in the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag, that every citizen have their rights restored? Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember that was one of my first votes in 2019. So yes, I would fully support it. Women were definitely left out, and seniors. So yes, I would be supportive. I've not seen it come up this year, so hopefully next year.
Would anyone else like to respond?
I've not seen it come up this year. As most things, I need to be able to read the legislation, but in concept, I would support it.
Yeah, Sylvester, I hadn't heard anything about it. I don't know the number and so forth, but I work with Greg Porter, and I got John Bartlett, great guy, on one of my bills, the one I was talking about with DCS. And so there are a lot of times it's not about, Republican, Democrat, whatever. It's a lot of times we pass legislation, and it's a big number as far as, it's bipartisan for the most part. But there's a few bills that are not that way, and it does make headlines in the news, so forth. But again, if I see about it, we'll discuss it. But I appreciate the conversation on that.
Thank you very much. And Representative Borders, I know you kind of came in midway through. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and have you, if we can kind of put a pause to the sponsorship questions right now, have you introduce yourself and brief summary of what you're working on, and we'll take it from there.
I appreciate it. Okay.
I think you're on.
Check. Okay. Thanks. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I had a meeting this morning, and the individual I was supposed to meet with showed up late, and so it's just made it tough. But anyhow, I serve on the three committees. I serve on our local government, insurance, and commerce. And we had a very, very interesting meeting in commerce the other day, and it was about, and I'm not sure how it's pronounced. It's either kratom or kratom. It's spelled K-R-A-T-O-M, and it was actually one of the most enjoyable committee hearings I've ever sat in, and it was on the Commerce Committee, and it probably lasted about 2 hours. We had one fellow who's over, I think he works out of John Hopkins Medical Hospital, and he's also was over kind of a drug addiction task force, and it's basically kind of a leafy substance that comes from, I believe, Southeast Asia and more southern climates. And the bottom line is that the FDA was wanting to make it a Scheduled I drug substance, and it's not like a marijuana type of thing. But there was a young fellow that spoke, a young guy named by the name of John, who just happened to catch it on the internet, and he can't take regular pain medicines because of the narcotic substances and the addictions that he's had. And so we're one of 6 states that basically still has it as a scheduled substance. And the bottom line is that we did it thinking that the federal government was going to do that. Well, then the federal government didn't do it. And so it was a great deal of testimony in that committee. And so I'm digging into that. I mean, I'm one of those that's usually very cautious on that stuff, but it's something to check out. Anyhow, kratom or Kratom or kratom. I'm not sure exactly which way it's pronounced, but that was one of the more interesting committees I've served on.
And Mr. Edwards, if you would like to briefly summarize your question so that Representative Borders could respond.
Since 2019, there was the hate crime bill that was up, but not all the categories or classes was taken care of, which are women or sex, gender identification, and age. And if it comes back up, would you vote for it?
No, I would not. I voted for the one earlier, or voted against the one earlier, and I would vote no on this one as well. Again, I think that a crime is a crime no matter what the motive is behind it. And I'm not into, basically, the bottom line is I'm not into prosecuting people based on emotion or thought. I'm into prosecuting people based on the actions that they do. I mean, you know, if somebody, for example, looks at, you know, me and they may hate my views or whatever, and if they come up and they slug me, well, is the crime that they hated my views or is the crime that they slugged me? And so I would vote no on that bill, and I voted no on it before. And you're not surprised, are you?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I could tell.
All right.
Because of the smile.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the question, appreciate the responses. Next up.
My name's Carolyn Calicott. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Vigo County. And I'd like to readdress Senate Bill SB 370 in regards to electronic voting machines, authored by Senator John Ford. Electronic voting machines provide that after June 30th, 2023, a county may not purchase new electronic voting systems except for certain purposes, provides that after December 31st, 2027, an electronic voting system may not be used in Indiana except for the purposes of enabling voters with disabilities to vote, provides for the January 1st, 2028 expiration of certain statutes relating to electronic voting systems, directs the interim study committee on elections to prepare legislation to make amendments to the Indiana Code the committee considers necessary to assist in the implementation of the phase-out of electronic voting systems. What do you consider is the best way to vote? Is it you don't want electronic voting machines that have paper trail, or what do you consider would be the best? And also, in regards to the committee, who do you want on that research committee in regards to this?
Yeah, so that bill, you know, isn't going to move, isn't going to have a committee hearing. The purpose, you know, is one, it's poorly written. The goal was not to say we're going back to paper, 100%. The goal was there's certain type of machines that are causing some issues in the state. And really because when they print out a receipt, the average citizen can't tell if who they voted for is on what is being submitted to the county, because there's a bunch of lines. So what we want is it to show like a real ballot who you vote for.
Okay.
So that was the goal, and to study, you know, after this 24 election, we're going to need to upgrade equipment. And so I do think we need to study and determine what equipment would be best. And in that, in the bill, it would be a summer study committee. So it'd be legislators on that bill, and we'd bring in experts to testify about it. But it's really, the goal was it to be the first step in really looking at what the next round of equipment would look like, and there's funding in the bill. So I was hoping to try to get the state to pay for some of this election equipment, so the burden is not solely on counties.
Okay.
So, but anyway, the bill is dead, not moving forward.
And since I sit on elections in the House, there are 4 different voting systems in Indiana. So it gets very confusing, and the different vendors, and some people where they vote, there is no paper trail at all. So my suggestion from sitting on the committee for 4 years and listening to all the confusion is to actually, I would support a study to see what's best moving forward, because after 2024, what we don't want to do is make counties pay a whole bunch of money to update systems that work. So.
Thank you for the clarification. It was kind of, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Diane Jocelyn. I am with the Wabash Valley chapter of the Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. Mine's a pretty simple question. I know there is a bill in, it was in the House, I don't know if it's passed out of the House, regarding the 13th check for retired teachers and public employees. And my question is, do you support this bill? And if you do, what do you think the chances of it passing? Because we've gone several years now without the 13th check.
Yeah, thank you for your, bringing that up. I want to say that, Tanya, we talked about that in Ways and Means the other day. Was that Bob Cherry's?
Yeah, we voted on it, and
Yeah.
it passed.
Right.
With the $50 increment, if you remember.
believe it
Was it
was.
50 on there? I can't remember. We did vote for the 13th check, and
Yeah.
if it makes it in the budget, it should be coming back. Go ahead, Bob. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And I think that's the goal, is to get it in there and so forth. So, yeah, it's been what do you say, Diane? What, 2 years or 3?
We haven't
Yeah.
received it.
Right, so it's, and I don't know about the Senate. Didn't you, John, what happened to the Senate there? Was that they didn't, I don't think they passed it out of the Senate, but we passed it, I believe, in the House there.
How does the bottom of the bus look right now? You got thrown under the bus.
Well, no, you know, the way the process works is they send it to us and we fix their bills, so I'm sure we will, but there's been
Spicy. All right.
a lot of positive talk about the 13th check on our side as well. So I think we're just waiting to see what comes over in the budget.
And I will say that this is an issue that I've been reached out, many, many, many people have reached out to me on this, and it is absolutely needed. We need to reinstall that.
Okay, I'm not used to being the buffer between you all. I'm normally that way around. Thank you very much, Jude.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it. All right, are there any other sponsors who would like to give their question? Right, if not, we're going to move to the public questions, and there are a few things that are a little different. Again, we want to reiterate that the microphone is over there now. Also, if you look behind, you'll see that there's seats, and so what we're doing is we're asking everybody who would like to ask a question, we're encouraging you to get in line right now, and if you do not want to stand long, we're asking that you take up those seats instead of just sitting and waiting until the line dims down. That way we can kind of have a better gauge on who all's going to be in line. 1 minute to ask your question, and then a minute and a half for the legislators to respond. This time, we are asking that you ask one question per person. And if you have more than one question, please ask the remaining questions during the meet and greet time. Also, we're asking that you ask a question that is for all of the legislators. If your question is only for one legislator, again, please wait until the meet and greet time to have that one-on-one conversation. This is so we can streamline some things for timing purposes. And again, as always, not all legislators have to answer the question, but we're asking that your question be available for everybody to answer so that we can kind of keep this a public forum as opposed to like a one-on-one conversation. And we will be wrapping up the public question and answer period at 11:20. So we want to get in all the questions that we can between now and then. So again, we're doing one question per individual and questions for all legislators. Those are the new things. And so at that time, we're asking anybody that would have a question to come on down and line up at that microphone and then use the seats. And please say your name and then ask your question.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Dillon. I'm the coordinator of the Vigo County Green Party. I'm going to go for a little bit of environmental stuff today. First of all, thank you for House Bills 1453 and Senate Bill 335, which are climate change task force. My question, and I have a tendency to call out on so-called greenwashing. Your perspectives on Senate Bill 451, which is a carbon sequestration pilot program.
Yeah, I support Senate Bill 451. That's my bill. And, you know, I've been working on carbon capture in the state since 2016, trying to get, you know, the goal of this is a pilot project that is very narrow in focus and that would capture carbon off of the production of fertilizer and would make it a green anhydrous fertilizer that would be produced here and sold hopefully locally. It is currently, it's had $60 million plus investment from the Department of Energy, and over $75 million of private investment. And so I think this is a very important economic development bill, not only for our region, but for the state of Indiana.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to respond?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I believe Alan Morrison, he was involved in that, was in the House side there a year or so ago pertaining to that. But and where they're looking at is just north of Terre Haute, where the old Public Service of Indiana power plant was. It was in that area that what they're looking at. But so it's, haven't heard that much about, of course, in the Senate, what's going on there. But it's been on some people's radar the last few years. But I don't know where we're going to go with that now.
I support this project. You know, the idea is either you put carbon up or you put it down. So this is being used in other countries, and it's being used in other states, and I think it's a good bill.
And I've voted for it as well, but and to be honest with you, and John, I'm not trying to pick on you, but I think that passed out of the House. Did it just not make it in the Senate? And I could be wrong on that. It seems like that's one of those issues that comes up really quite often, maybe every year even, and you know, and a lot of bills do. It's not that it's not that we're into Groundhog Day. It's just that some bills maybe they make it, you know, through part of the process one year, and then if they don't make it all the way through, the author brings them up or somebody else brings it up, and I just don't remember. It seems like it passed out of the House. Or, Tanya, do you remember on that?
Oh, I remember. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it did. I mean, and we're, you know, this bill this year is trying to tweak a few things to get some clarity on some issues. So it's, again, with new technology, something like this, we're always, to your point, Bruce, kind of always going to be coming back, tweaking it a little bit.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Next question.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Patty Curley. I teach in Vigo County School Corporation. My question concerns the expansion of school vouchers. I believe it's SB 305, but actually school vouchers in general. We've heard for several years the money follows the child, but it doesn't seem like it works that way with any other tax entity. You know, there's a decent road in front of our farm, but if I decide I'd rather have a road behind the farm, they're not going to give me tax money and say, well, the money follows the driver, so build your own road. And if I don't like the police force, they're not going to give me money back and say, hire a bodyguard. I just wish someone could help me understand, if you are in favor of vouchers, why public schools have to give up their money whenever a citizen is unhappy, but no other entity seems to have to do that.
I'll let you guys go first.
Go ahead.
Well, Patty, you might know or might not know that I supported that 12 years ago, and I still support that. And, you know, why are some people, I don't understand why they're against kids getting a good education, whether it's in Marion County. And I remember 12 years ago, I got off the elevator, and there was an African-American lady, grandmother, crying and saying, please vote for the charter school bill. And I said, well, why is that? She says, because my granddaughter is in a situation where she needs to be out of this school and potentially go over to this school and get a better education. And I support that, whatever color of the child is, gender, whatever. I support that. I think it's important for individuals, whether you're a parent or grandparent or guardian, to allow getting the best education that they can possibly get, whether that's in the eastern part of the state, northern, whatever it may be. But I remember that, and I said and I voted that way. That was in 2011, and I still support that.
Well, I'll give an example. In my district, House District 45, we have a charter school at the rural academy at Graysville, and then there's also the Union School at Duggar as well. Whereas Duggar had lost their school system, and it basically was the parents that became involved. And of course, if a community loses a school, they lose a lot of their identity. I mean, there's no question about that. And schools are a big part of what brings life to our communities, and maybe the biggest part of it. And now the Union School in Duggar is doing phenomenally well. I mean, they really are. And I don't know that the parents necessarily chose to send their children there as opposed to other schools for any other reason than they wanted the school, wanted a school system in their community, which they'd had for, probably over 100 years. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the exact numbers on that. But the bottom line is the parents are choosing to send their children there, but that doesn't mean that kids aren't going to Sullivan schools or to North Central and other schools in Sullivan County as well. But again, this is purely a matter of the parents wanting their children to go there for whatever the specific reasons. And it seems to be working out well. I mean, in fact, I know some of the teachers that were teaching in what you would class as a traditional public school who are now teaching at these other schools and seeming to like it just fine. So,
I don't support school vouchers. Any money that gets taken away from public schools, in my opinion, is not good. Public schools educate over 90% of Indiana Hoosiers, and for the last 4 years, I've watched the money go down from public schools and the money go up for vouchers. Yes. And also, public schools accept everyone. We teach everyone. So there are schools that receive vouchers that are not ADA acceptable. They can discriminate against children not coming there. And so my viewpoint is always that we need to beef up public education. We need to put more money behind public education because that's what serves the majority of our students.
So I support parents and the parents' rights to move kids to school where they want to. I mean, we have a lot of coming out of COVID kind of opened my eyes a little bit, where a lot of parents here in Vigo County are sending their kids to other county schools because they were open more. They had different masking policies, and I support that effort. And in terms of Senate Bill 305, I'm not sure. I have not read the bill. I'm not sure where it is at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Ron Drill, I'm working on one cup of coffee here.
It's all right.
To my understanding, there's no second going back in line.
Right. If you could
Okay.
ask one question, and then if you have a follow-up, if you could do it during the meet and greet.
And if you could
Yes.
lift that mic up just a hair, sorry. Thanks.
Short people have rights.
I wasn't trying to deny your rights, I just wanted to hear your voice.
Just trying to bring a little humor. We have to all get along and enjoy these meetings so we can talk comfortably and
Sure.
do the best we can. Okay. Persons with disability have the same rights as all people to non-discriminatory access equally of opportunities, inclusion, and full participation in society. These are the basic principles underlying the American with Disability Act and the I need glasses. Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, was first legally document protecting universal human rights. It is generally agreed to be the foundation of international human rights laws. I don't have 10 pages this time.
Just 8, right?
Well, I'm not going to read just a section. So, therefore, I require that our elected politicians cease and desist any further funding, grants, or income distribution. Well, I guess I'm out of time, so I will talk.
Go ahead and continue if you can kind of concisely say what your question's going to be as best you can.
Okay, let's go to the end. The gist of it is, and everything, we're looking for if the state would put a bill or something on the board and everything to maybe open up more treatment for drug addicts and everything to receive treatment. There's only one methadone program in there, and you're only allowed one you have to have a license. So if maybe you would be considered to maybe 2 per county. That way it always gives every patient equal opportunity and a second chance to receive treatment.
Thank you
And
very
then
much.
I could speak to the members if they have a few minutes after the meeting.
Absolutely. Would anyone like to address this at this point?
Anybody agree?
Happy to talk to you afterwards at 11:30. You know, we are trying to put a lot more money into mental health and drug addiction. There's a number of bills to do that and to fund different programs. I to be honest, don't remember exactly on methadone what we're doing, but, you know, our goal is to provide more addiction treatment. I mean, we know that it's an issue, and we know mental health's an issue, and we're trying to work on that and have a lot of bills dealing with that.
And I know, Bob, I'm going to need your help on this one. In Ways and Means, we're part of the opioid settlement, correct? And Vigo County is part of that, which means that we'll be getting, I can't remember how much money, but we are getting money over to Vigo County for this purpose.
Yeah, several millions, I think. I think Representative Karakoff had that bill,
Yep.
I believe he did.
Yeah.
So I think House Bill 1006, authored by Greg Sturwald from Plainfield, I think, and that just recently passed, I believe.
Yes, unanimously.
But yeah, and that dealt with mental health programs. So it's on our radar, and I believe it looks like the Senate sponsor, Senator Freeman, has going to have that bill over in the Senate to deal with that. So it's in process, and I feel good that it will pass over in the Senate as well.
It's going to take time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right, I'm a recorded POA for this patient, so I'm just advocating to try to get her treatment. There's so many dying out there of the drug overdose and the fentanyl they're putting into the drugs. So I do appreciate your time. Thank all of you and everything, and I will wait if any of you have a minute after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm Susan Edmondson. I was glad to hear that perf that you're giving us, our 13th check, I hope that does come back. It makes a difference. It was more than the raise you gave us last year, and we got no raise for this year. So that's 2 years in a row that we're losing money. And that is the extra money. My Social Security pays my bills. The perf is what I live on for groceries and gas. And so I do look forward to that 13th check. I've also been hearing that is, and I know a lot of things get talked about at the state. So my question is, do any of you know what the status of this is? That there was some talk about changing the state, changing how it invests money, and that would result in less funds for PERF down the line. Are any of you familiar with that possible legislation discussion?
I think there was, is it the ESG bill? And I think that, but I think that is, it's on the House side, so I'm not, I know there was a report that came out that it was gonna cost PERF $6 billion.
Seven.
Yeah, I think, Susan, I think that dealt with, you were talking about House Bill 1008. I think that's the bill that deals with the ESG, and it deals with the investments pertaining to the Indiana Pension Retirement Fund, I believe. That's one you're talking about. The fiscal on it came out this past week, said it was like 6 or 7 billion or something.
Losses, yeah.
Was that it? Yeah, and so we're going to deal with that in Ways and Means, I think, on Monday after session and talk about 1008. So I think that may be the bill you might be talking about, I believe.
Okay. Okay, I'll talk with you after the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My name is Kevin Southwood, and I'd just like to offer some ideas to help give Terre Haute some positives. You know, I think that, you know, people that volunteer, you know, like say if they volunteer for 30 or 40 hours a year, they ought to get a gold flag so they can put on their porch. You know, that means that they're volunteer, they're in good status with the city or the county. You know, if they do it every year they do it, they get like a gold star. I'd like to see also where you have people that, you know, you have a good, well-kept home and yard, they would get a flag like a city of Terre Haute. You know, one flag for like each block, and then you could earn one for yourself, but it would showcase that like a certain standard should be maintained in every neighborhood, you know. And I'd like to see where you would have like a mile markers where you have walk paths around this city to where you have like a picture of a heart with every mile. It'd be like 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile all around the city in different parts, so that you know, it encourages people to go out and walk.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for those suggestions. Would anyone like to respond to any of that?
Kevin, have you talked to the city council or the mayor or anybody local?
Yeah, every time I've offered ideas to this city, probably 100 of them, they've all got flushed down the toilet. You know, that's why the sewage plant costs so much money.
Kevin, I have one question from our meeting a month ago. Is that clothespin on your dash still helping out with the road rage issue?
Is what?
The clothespin on your car dash, is that still helping out with the road rage issue?
Yes.
Good.
And see, that's something. It's like cues, you know. It helps me to be a better driver. It helps me to be a safer driver. And not only would it work with bad driving, but it could work with people that always on cell phones, or people that go up to stoplights and they don't go when it turns green. You know, you know, that is just a simple thing to help people to be aware of their driving and to improve on their driving. That's all, and it's a simple thing, a cost of a clothespin, and it allows you to see that. You're aware of it constantly. It's actually like your own police force in your car.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for those ideas. Some really good ones there. And encourage you to meet and greet with our legislators after the public question session's over. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Susan Good. I reside here in Vigo County. I have been a teacher most of my life. I've worked with children my whole life. I now work with pre-service teachers and teachers in the field. But my most important job is that I'm a mom. And as a mom, my goal is to protect and affirm and help my child discover her true self. Imagine having the resources to help your child, but not being allowed to legally. My child is my daughter, who is transgender. Being good meant being someone else. She had transformations occur after some hormone replacement therapy, surgeries. A lot of you say, I don't get it, I don't understand. I don't either, I'm still learning a whole lot. I do know that with proper legislation, that parents' rights will be, it will include me as a parent and other parents of transgender children to affirm and help our children succeed. There's an onslaught of bills right now targeting the LGBTQ Hoosiers and trans kids, pushing them out of public life. I know that there are proposed bills that are banning science-based care that leads to dangerous consequences, forcing teachers to out students, limiting access to books that help them confirm their identity, limit ability to update gender on their IDs. I want you to please consider my family and other families like mine when you consider these bills and how you vote on them. They affect real families and real people. Thank you. And if everybody has a response, that would be awesome.
Well, I'll share, one of the bills that was introduced was mine. I mean, it's not the one that's getting a hearing. I think it's, Michelle Davis's, I believe, isn't it? It's probably going to be heard. But the bottom line is most of the bills that I'm seeing this year have to do with children and not allowing the transformation processes to change the sex of a child that are basically minors. And I do support the idea of not allowing that to be done to a child. If it's an adult, then the individual is an adult, that's another ballgame. But if it's a child, yeah, I think that's is a tragedy to allow that to occur in childhood. I really do.
So I'm the exact opposite. I don't think the government should have any discussion on what you and your family and your doctor deem necessary.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Stacy Pierce, and I'm a volunteer at the Pride Center of Terre Haute and a concerned citizen. We work hard to create an accepting and safe space for the LGBTQ youth in our community. Some trans and non-binary youth have personally shared with me that they don't feel safe in school or in this community because of bullying and harassment. The result of the Trevor Project, a 2022 survey of over 34,000 LGBTQ youth conducted, concludes LGBTQ youth who found their school to be LGBTQ affirming report lower rates of attempted suicide. Also, 45% of Indiana LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide. My question is regarding the current 20-plus bills focused on trans youth. What are you doing to help the trans youth in our community feel safe?
Thank you.
I don't think we're doing anything. I think we're attacking LGBTQ plus community and making Indiana a non-welcoming state. We talk a lot about workforce, and we talk about all the problems with getting people housing, childcare, workforce, and these bills like this one and also the abortion one this summer are discouraging people from wanting to stay in Indiana and certainly people from wanting to come to Indiana. So quite frankly, I don't think we're doing anything as a state.
Well, I would disagree with that. I mean, the bottom line is that, I'm assuming by the nature of your question that you're saying, okay, that they have different safety needs. I mean, if somebody, as a former mayor, for example, if somebody was being attacked or they needed help or whatever, we could care less what their sexual orientation was. We were going to protect them. As far as within a school system, I mean, I would assume that a teacher is simply, if they're teaching math or if they're teaching science or English or whatever, they're going to teach them no differently than other students. But I think to sequester LGBT youth out separately and say, okay, we're going to teach differently or we're going to protect differently, again, regardless of a person's color, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of their sex, male or female. The bottom line is that they are protected in Indiana. They're not, you know, and I resent the idea that we have to do everything differently based on sexual orientation. Again, protections are provided to society at large by our police departments, regardless of an individual's sexual orientation, regardless of their skin color and so forth. And so the idea that Indiana is not providing proper protection, I don't agree with that.
Thank you very much. Next question.
My name's Jack Sternfeld. During Mr. Heaton's
Jack, we
introduction.
can't hear you.
Could you pull the mic up and speak into it? Thank you so much.
My name's Jack Sternfeld. During Mr. Heaton's introduction, if I understood you correctly, you mentioned the fact that you supported raising the pay of the people doing the great work at places like Gibault. I was wondering if you could expand on how you came to that conclusion that they were worthy of a raise, and if everybody else could comment on whether or not they support that bill.
Yeah, Jack, thanks for the comment. Yeah, my bill, I've got a few of them, but it was, I believe it was 1581 was the bill. And this past summer, I talked to an individual who runs the Youth Opportunity Center in Muncie area in Delaware County. And he was telling me that his staff, if you will, about 700 employees, they've had to cut that basically in half because they couldn't afford to pay a raise to those employees, because those employees were leaving and going to McDonald's or Taco Bell serving, and so that's where it started. And I know Gibault down here, you know, they were formed many years ago, and they, you know, helping the disadvantaged and those kids. I was on the advisory board of the Vigo County Group Home for about 20 years. And so I heard firsthand years ago about the issues there, whether it was in the house down here on South 6th Street, and then the up north at the Rose Hill location. So it's just, and they came up with the $46.9 million in the fund. And again, being on the budget bill, the Ways and Means, we've been talking about that, but also some other agencies pertaining to that. But it's a big issue, and it's not just it's everywhere. You know, it's not just in West Central Indiana or in Southern Indiana, but it's everywhere. And I think one of the largest agencies is in Indianapolis, Marion County. I think it's Firefly. I believe that's the name of it. I don't know if anybody knows, but it's something where very much needed. And so I appreciate the comment.
You know, I'd say, you know, like healthcare, you know, the providers for these type of services are really struggling to get workforce. And, you know, one of the things that is not well known is they can only bill the state with a 2-year lag. So they're getting reimbursed at 2020 cost. And we all know what has happened with wages and other inflationary items since then. So I support the idea of the bill. I haven't read it, but, you know, when it comes over from the House, I, you know, plan to be supportive of it.
I've been to Gibault, toured it, talked about it. That's a hard job. So yes, absolutely support it.
One of the things I'll mention, it's not just Gibault. I mean, it's employers in general. I have a son-in-law who's an eye doctor, and my daughter is a registered nurse. She helps out with his office, or 2 offices now. But they just recently had to close down one of their offices, and it wasn't because they didn't have enough patients. He's an incredibly good eye doctor. They're down around Dallas, Texas now. In fact, he served in the military, and when he was down at Fort Campbell, he was voted as the #1 eye doctor by all of the soldiers and their families. They had a patient base of, I want to say, around 20 or 30,000 by the time you had all the soldiers and their families. An incredibly good eye doctor, but he just simply can't compete with, I mean, he said down there, he said at a McDonald's you could be making $24, $25 an hour, and he said, I can't even keep my doors open. You know, they were averaging a little over $24 an hour, and one of the problems we're having, as I've shared this before, if you go to YouTube and look up a video called Demographic Winter, and it's followed up by one called Demographic Bomb, The bottom line, as it points out, is that as the baby boomers are retiring and younger people are coming in, we just simply, and our birth rate has dropped substantially low. We just don't have enough workers coming into the workforce as well. And then so the pay may very well be part of the issue, but also a big part of it is just simply the workforce just is not available out there for many of the occupations, and a lot of employers, that's the number one issue I hear from employers, is that we just can't get enough workers, or we can't keep them because they can go from here to here overnight and make more money.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Rosemary Scott. My question is to all of you, of course. How do you feel about making school board declare a party? I feel like we should keep party politics out of the school board. In our county, we have 7 people representing approximately 13,700 students. None of our little kids come to school saying, I'm a D or I'm an R or I'm a Libertarian or Green Party. We know most children do vote the way their parents vote, so obviously that's an influence. But when it comes to school board, even people who run for school board are attracted to that because they do not have to declare a party. We speak of outcomes, good outcomes for our children, and I don't see where we get a better outcome by making our school board declare a party.
Thank you.
I'll say, I mean, you know, we heard a bill on this in the Senate, and a lot of school boards feel the way that you feel. You know, we had a small group of parents from certain counties in the state that they've had issues, and they obviously think more transparency, knowing more about school board members is important. You know, I think one of the flaws in the system for school board is the filing, last day of filing for school board is mid-August. And then you're voting beginning of October. So a lot of complaints I got last fall was people really don't get to know their school board members. And I think for a lot of folks, a solution to that is putting party affiliation in it. And we have to be honest. I mean, politics is on the school board already. And it's already in the school system. It's already there. And, you know, the bill in the Senate is not going to move forward. But it was for me enlightening to hear the discussion. I mean, in some of these counties, the school board races, the candidates were run by parties. The filings were run by parties, you know, in Boone and Hamilton County. So it's there. I mean, it's just a matter, kind of my belief would be we move the filing deadline earlier to give parents more time to get to know school board members.
So we heard the bill in elections this week, and it's pretty close to even of people that testified that wanted it and didn't want it. I personally do not want it. I don't think it's needed. I'm not opposed to moving the filing deadline up, like to May, so that people have more time, but I think the onus is on the voter. So schools have enough problems. They have a big budget, and, you know, I've noticed it being a politician. Once I say I'm a Democrat, people will walk away from me. And I don't want that to be part of school boards. Also, one thing that we keep talking about is if you have to declare Democrat or Republican or whatever, then Hatch Act, federal employees cannot run. And so we have, you know, penitentiary workers, we have Crane in Indiana. And so you're telling a whole segment of population that, hey, thanks, but you can't run for this. And as you know, school board is limited. You can only make $2,000. That was set by the General Assembly. So I believe that if you do run for school board, your heart's in the right place. I don't think you run for school board to make money or to be a Democrat or Republican. I think you run for school board to help people.
Go ahead.
Well, I talked to, I think last year, J.D. Prescott had the bill. It was heard in committee. It wasn't voted on. Nothing happened. Well, Representative Prescott came back just the other day, didn't he, in elections, and I think it passed down party lines on that. I don't know where it's going to end up. I hear that it might end up eventually that to allow the candidate to make that decision whether he or she wants to put an R or a D or an I behind their name. Time will tell if that will happen. Back maybe 3 months ago, I talked to 17 school superintendents up at ISU, and several of them didn't say anything. There was a few that said, you know, Illinois does a very good job when it comes to educating the school board members over there. But we'll see where that goes. But it did get out of committee, down party line votes, I believe it was, just the other day, so.
And J.D. Prescott, I think there were one or two members of the House that offered a bill. I think his is the one that's being heard, as Bob was sharing there. But he was asking me where I stood on that issue, and I said, no, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. But on the same token, one of the things that I do want to point out is that, you know, and not trying to poke a finger at you, but you mentioned, you know, keeping politics out of schools. Well, I can tell you as someone who's been targeted in many, many races, the vast majority of the money that was spent against me was through basically the ISTA. I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, you know, as far as the idea that politics is not part of or politics is not you know, involved in education, nothing could be further from the truth. It's very much alive and well within the education system.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to defer to the library right now as I see our line continues to grow, which is fantastic. I'm going to say if you have a question, let's go ahead and get in line now, and then we'll go ahead and close it off after that. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is James Gosnell. I was born...
Yes, so we can, if you could pull the mic up so we can hear you.
Even more.
And speak into it.
Hi, my name is James Gosnell. I was born and raised here. And for the last 10 years, we actually lived in Chicago. And now we're back home. Representative Pfaff mentioned...
And James, it's still a little tough to hear you.
Oh, okay. Representative Pfaff mentioned medical freedom. We experienced a lot of coercion in Chicago and in Illinois, particularly with medical freedom. We do believe that a person and their doctor, once they talk, they should be able to establish what is right for themselves, what they should be doing with their own bodies, particularly with COVID injections. What are we doing here in Indiana to protect our freedoms and increase the freedoms that have been taken away from us without due process, particularly with coercion and totalitarianism? I yield my time.
Well, I'll mention that last year, I believe I was a co-author, certainly supported it. There was a bill that, or maybe it was 2 years ago, that basically prohibited coercion in terms of the vaccines and so forth. And what's interesting is a very dear friend of mine, and I won't go into too many specifics. I mean, it's not likely that you would, you know this individual, but I had cautioned this particular individual about the vaccines, and I know there are those that are going to go, oh, here he goes again. But regardless, they went ahead and had both of the shots and then the booster shots as well. And they ended up getting endocarditis, which I believe is the hardening of the lining around the heart, and then they ended up having to get a pacemaker installed. And in their case, it truly was diagnosed as a result of the vaccines. And what's interesting is another friend of mine, and another bill that I had supported was one that basically prohibited pharmaceutical companies from making ivermectin available to the public in general. And I had one of our legislators poo-pooing me and what an idiot you are and blah, blah, this. And you had the vaccines and so forth. And then not too long ago, he became literally almost mortally ill. And in private conversation, he did admit to me that the bottom line was that a doctor got him ivermectin, and that's what saved his life and his wife's life as well. And so
I've heard similar things.
I'm sorry?
I just read a paper. Ivermectin clears out
Okay,
out
so
your cells.
this is a
Right.
this is a
So
one-on-one
the
conversation.
bottom line is that I completely agree with you that many people were coerced to do something that, in my opinion, based on medical studies and scientific studies across the board, have proved to be lethal to many individuals. And I hope we never see such a dark day in America again.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Aaron Muchler. I work here at the Vigo County Public Library, specifically in our tech department. Normally I ask questions about trans rights, but I know that's not going to have much effect here today. So today I'm actually going to ask about something different, something I encounter here at the library a lot. So as part of my duties at the library, we frequently help people out with their application for TAMP benefits, SNAP benefits, energy assistance, and all these things. And one common trend is that our patrons, especially people who are of a lower socioeconomic status, it's incredibly difficult for them to be able to fill out these applications. The websites are poorly designed and almost, it looks like intentionally confusing to be able to operate. And for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience navigating websites and these kind of applications, a lot of our patrons wouldn't be able to get their applications in without help from, for example, the library staff. So my question is, what legislation has been proposed to help fix that? And if none has been, would you support legislation to make the process of applying for these social benefits easier?
Thank you.
I think there is a bill, and I can't remember the bill number, to make the application for SNAP easier, because I think we've recognized that it is very difficult, like you said. I just can't remember the bill number off the top of my head. But yeah, I would support that, and obviously with the work I've done on TANF, you know, a lot of the research shows that people don't apply because it's too difficult. But I'm glad to hear the library is helping and having, you know, internet opportunities for folks, because that's definitely another barrier.
I would definitely support it. And, you know, a lot of these websites, so you know what FAFSA is?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my, So that's one of those that it takes me 45 minutes to apply for that. And although the General Assembly wants everyone to mandate it, to have to do it, we keep hearing this bill every year, it's not up this year right now. Until the website gets easier, then I'm against it. So anything you can do to help our citizens just fill out forms is great. And thank you for helping them. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Aaron, I would actually kudo the responses to my two friends here as well. The bottom line is, I know, you know, I actually have a lot of people stop in my insurance office that need assistance with various state issues because I have a business right on Main Street in Jasonville, and so to them, that's the state rep's office. You know, I might be in there and doing my insurance work, but if they see my van, they're like, hey, I'm going to go in, and it's just a nightmare navigating some of those. And then it's even worse, you know, heaven forbid that you have to call somebody and get a real person on the phone. You wait and you wait and you wait. And it's not just state government. I think it's government in general that there's, you know, we've basically taken this attitude that, well, you know, if you can't navigate a computer well, or you can't navigate the website, it's your own fault. Well, no, it's not. The bottom line is there's still nothing better than real people dealing with real people. And so what my goal would primarily be is to make sure that we have real human beings that are there to assist, because I just think that there's an assumption by many that a computer can do everything, and that's just a really bad assumption.
Aaron, thanks for the question. I'm just thankful that I've got a 13-year-old grandson, 11-year-old granddaughter that can help me with that kind of stuff. So I don't mean to be light of it, but they know it, and they start in, and it's like, that's how you do it, Papa. So, but yeah, it is complicated. Yeah.
Well, and even if the websites aren't complicated, they're just not. It's like, you know, you go to this point and then it backs you up somewhere or throws you out or whatever. I mean, I find that a lot of times you don't have to know calculus to navigate it. Point A doesn't go to point B very well.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we get to go into turbo mode now because we are coming down the home stretch. So if we can do.
Turbo mode or turbo mode?
Turbo. If we can do 30 seconds per everybody around, let's try to streamline it, that would be fantastic. So go ahead, 30 seconds for your question and 30 seconds for your response, and not everybody has to respond. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Claire Craigmile, and I would like to ask, are you aware of the specific violence targeted toward LGBTQ plus and trans people? Are you aware of the context that may subject LGBTQ people toward violence? It's irresponsible to suggest that trans people aren't targeted for violence when in 2022, dozens of trans people were murdered specifically because they're trans. Calling gender-affirming care a tragedy when it saves lives is irresponsible. What is tragic is the lives of LGBTQ youth lost too soon. So I would like to ask you to reflect on what does it actually mean to you to protect LGBTQ youth. Thank you.
Well, I'll mention it, as I shared before, the bottom line is that, as a former mayor, again, when we got a call where somebody was needing assistance or my police department was doing work, again, we didn't respond any faster or any slower because of a person's sexual orientation or because of the color of their skin or anything as far as their individual personality. I mean, if they need help and they need protection, they're going to get that help and that protection.
Okay. Next question. Thank you very much.
Good morning. This question is for Representative Mr. Bruce Borders.
And for everybody.
And I wanted I wanted to reemphasize on the hate crime bill.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, how is it that individuals cannot support the hate crime bill when historically there have been injustices done to African Americans in the state of Indiana? I can remember 3 years ago, there was a situation in Bloomington with an individual. He was almost lynched because I have a friend of mine. He's on the city council for Bloomington as far as that. Also, there's been instances in the past where a black woman by the name of Carol Jenkins, she was murdered in Martinsville, September 21st of 1967. But my question is, how can an individual not support the bill when like I said, you have injustices done to blacks, and a lot of the blacks have left Indiana because they don't feel safe?
Well, I will go ahead and answer that again. I never once indicated that crimes should not be prosecuted. Again, the motive behind the crime is one thing, but the bottom line is, did a crime occur? And if a crime occurred, regardless of who did it and why they did it, they should be dealt with. And so, again, the problem that I have is that whenever we start looking at trying to devise the motive behind it, I mean, I'll share an example with you. My uncle, who was a war veteran, he was a Golden Gloves boxer, all right, he was shot on his lawnmower. He was shot by a neighbor who happened to be a black man. I don't hate that neighbor. I mean, the bottom line, and he was shot because part of getting into the gang in Gary, Indiana, where my aunt and my cousin still live, he had to shoot a white man that he knew, and so that's what he did. He shot him, and he ended up dying as a result of being shot on his lawnmower. Was the crime the fact that he was was the crime that he was trying to get in the gang? No, the crime was that he shot my uncle, and he died. And so I could care less what color the man was who shot my uncle and killed my uncle, but what bothers me is that my uncle died as a result of a senseless crime. And so there again, by using emotion as a crime, I think is wrong. I think we need to prosecute the crime itself, and in this case, the crime was that my uncle was shot.
All right, thank you very much for your question. And as it stands right now, if we can motor through as much as we can, because we're going to have to cut this off at 11:20, which is in 3 minutes, so let's try to go fast.
Okay, my name is Sister Barbara Batista. I'm a Sister of Providence, and I live out at St. Mary the Woods, and a lifelong Hoosier. My question is concerning the attack on the LGBTQ community by the current legislature. There, at my count, there were approximately 20 bills. There might be even more that were introduced. Many of them, thankfully, have died in committee, so that's really great news. But some of you sitting on the panel here today have authored some of these bills. My question is, or co-sponsored. Some are authors, some are co-sponsored. My question, oh dear, is, it says stop, sorry. My question is, so equity and equality are two different things. The American with Disabilities Act talks about equity for persons that are differently abled. The attack on LGBTQ community tells me that some of us don't understand the difference between equity and equality. Some people need more protection in order for equity to happen, and I'd love to hear your response.
Right?
I agree.
Thank you.
Well, Sister Barbara, last year I was co-author of House Bill 1041, and you might know that. Let me tell you about that bill itself. This occurred up in Elkhart area about 1.5 years ago. A biological boy was running against biological girls in a track meet, 1,500 meter. And one of the girls, biological girls, one of the best in the state, 8th grader, got beat in a 1,500 meter race by, okay, thank you, by the biological boy, okay, by 30 seconds or so. So Joanna King, it was her constituent that started that bill process. Michelle Davis from Greenwood area, she was the author of the bill. And I supported that. I think it's important that biological boys compete against other biological boys. Biological girls competing against other biological girls. I think that's very important. And especially last year when we celebrated 50 years of Title IX and protection of girls' sports. And so anyway, that's, she came to me and I would happy to be in on that bill, and it worked out. So I think that's very important, to protect girls' sports.
Yeah, I was talking about current.
Okay. Can't do the back and forth, unfortunately, just don't have time at this point. Would anyone else like to respond? All right, so I've been asked to ask legislators, because we are over on our time, if you would like to give up your closing statements, we can let everybody in the line go through. So if you would be okay with doing that, so we can get as much public comment as possible, that'd be great. Thank you, legislators. Shall we continue?
Thank you, legislators, for letting us ask our questions. Thank you. I was very impressed with all of your responses to the question about the Jabalt getting, the employees there getting an increase in salary. That sounds wonderful to me. It makes sense. I would like to know how you feel, given that, about raising teachers' salaries in this state, because we have a shortage of teachers and a hard time getting good teachers, public school teachers I'm talking about here.
You guys know where I am. Go ahead. I'll go last.
Yeah, sure. I'm okay with paying teachers more. That's a local school board decision. And
Well, the state could, well, excuse me, I'm not supposed to say.
I mean, it's a school board decision. I mean, it's, we send a lot of money. Here in Vigo County, it's twice as much as our county government that they get, and their school board can make that decision. They're elected officials. I mean, I wonder sometimes myself why some school corporations don't pay teachers more. Is it because there's too many administrators? Perhaps. Too many schools? Too many school buses? Wasted money? I don't know. There's some reason why they're not.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about that. I think it was about 9 or 10 years ago in this room, Superintendent Danny Tanous made a comment that beginning salaries of teachers here in the school corporation was $32,000. $32,000, this is about 10 years ago. Well, over in Clay Community Schools, about 9 miles to the east, their starting compensation for teachers was $38,000. Guess what happened? There was a lot of teachers from here that went to Clay Community Schools, and they didn't have a shortage because it was $6,000 more. And so Senator Ford was talking about, it is a local issue as far as the school corporation to make that decision. I mean, what we at the General Assembly, we send the money out, so to speak, and let the locals make that decision. The 292 school corporations out there. So, you know, that's what it was back then, and now I know we're talking about, you know, starting out 40,000 or so, and it needs to be increased. But the last, when it came to funding of K through 12, the last 3.5 years, about almost $2 billion of new money went to K through 12. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I'll be happy to talk to you about
Okay,
that.
thank you.
And think about the referendum we passed here for operations. Teachers got a stipend. They didn't get a pay increase. And Vigo County residents voted to give teachers more pay, but the teachers didn't get it.
Thank you.
So as you can imagine, I support giving teachers more money. But one of my concerns is actually retaining teachers. If you make it 3 years, we're happy. But usually by year 5, 50% of educators leave the profession. I may be off on those numbers, but a lot of people leave, and they leave for different reasons. They leave because mostly money. I have 4 children myself. I can't get one of them to be a teacher. This is, Mom, you don't make anything. So, you know, money does drive this next generation's decisions. And so saying that, there are 290 school corporations in the state, which I'm always confused by how there can be that many. So I think the system as a whole needs to be looked at so that more money can come and direct it to teacher salaries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Connie Miller. I live in Vigo County, and this question could be for all of you. In 2022, I received a lot of literature, and this was specifically from Bob Heaton, and I was a little confused about your messaging. I received, it was called Paid For by U.S. Term Limits. You're supporting term limits for the U.S. Congress. So you were getting your information, but you didn't have anything about the state of Indiana about what you were supporting. So my question is also, do you support term limits for state representatives? And when literature is also sent out on your behalf, how is that handled on campaign finance laws?
Okay, this is a
And
very
do you have
specific
a-
question for
Yeah.
Representative Heaton.
Well,
Let's go ahead and
the others could do it too.
Yeah, let's go ahead, just for conciseness sake, let's go ahead and ask
Do you have
opinions on
do you
term
have
limits.
to do you have to claim that as a campaign donation in your campaign finance? And this is for all of you. It could
Okay, I'm
be.
sorry,
What do
ma'am.
you feel is your best legislation achievement after 12 years?
Okay, so one question, and that one question per person, because we've done this with everybody else, will be term limits to the general direction of everybody here. And if you have follow-up questions, please do it after the
Okay.
form. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Connie, I would, do you live in my district?
Yes, I do.
Where? Where do you live?
In south end of town.
So Representative
We
Heaton.
can talk afterwards, but I knew you
Yes.
and Brad lived on the east side of town.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I was up at the State House a year ago, and I want to say the individual was from Alabama or someplace who asked me about that for congressional term limits in D.C., and I said, I think that works out well. I mean, and his emphasis was Nancy Pelosi being in there for many, many years, you know, there ought to be term limits. And I said, I support that. A few of my colleagues did. I know Representative Borders did not, but there was a lot of people that did. And as far as term limits on a statewide basis, I'm open to that discussion.
We're asking that you remain silent while people are talking too, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
There we go. I was approached by the same fella, and I told him no. And if you look at James Madison, who's considered the primary author of the U.S. Constitution, he actually wrestled with that issue a lot. He truly did. And the bottom line was that at the end of the day, which I don't have time to go into all of it, but the bottom line was that he decided that he didn't support it, and it was not supported by the U.S. Constitution. And that's one of the things that I told the fellow as well, is that I said, you know, so you're basically wanting me to vote for, you know, support term limits for my congressmen and for my U.S. senators, but not against myself. And I said, I have trouble with that. And he said, well, we will come after you in the election. And they did. They came out with TV ads against me, radio ads against me, postcards against me, Facebook ads against me, and so forth. I mean, they were ruthless to me, and I praise the Lord that I you know, made it through it. But yeah, they came after me hard and heavy, and I just couldn't support it based on my own conscience and also what the father of the Constitution had written as well.
Yeah, I support term limits for Congress and for us in the General Assembly in Indiana. Also, working on a bill this year to do away with our short session and only have one session every 2 years like Texas, because the short session used to be, and why it was allowed, was for technical changes. Now it's turned into a full-blown session where we try to cram, you know, thousands of bills through. So but yes, I do support term limits for both Washington and Indianapolis.
I support them, I just don't know what the magic number is. I've been there 4 years, so 4, you know, I don't think is the number. I don't know what the number is, and I'll be happy to have that conversation if someone can tell me what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the magic number, it's for some legislators, it should be shorter than others.
How long you been in?
All right. If you would like to have this conversation after the public session, please do so. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, I'm Mark Spellbring from Rockville. I missed some of the earlier discussion about school board partisanship, elections and such, but I just want to add a comment. As a newspaper reporter, I cover both school corporations, school boards in Park County. And in the time I've done that, I have never seen an issue where there was any evidence of partisanship in that. I mean, I know the politics of the people, even though they don't declare it, but I've never had a case that I've covered where I see one side, the Republicans are supporting this, the Democrats are supporting that. So I don't see that at all in real life in actually being there. The one thing I would add is, or question, is there anything that keeps a candidate from including their partisan background in their literature, in their resume or something like that? Because I don't think there is. So if they choose to do that, there's nothing that says I can't be, you know, I'm a member of this club, I'm a member of that, and I'm backing a particular party. I just see nothing that prohibits that from happening. Thank you.
I believe you're right. I brought that up in committee this past week, that if once you put your name down, you can campaign all you want. Put D, put R, wherever you want. You can campaign as much as you want as partisan. But yeah, there's nothing against that.
And finally, yes.
Good morning, everyone. I am Valerie Hart-Craig, member NAACP. I do the environmental climate justice, but for today, I am going to put on my education hat. I just have a curiosity question. So some things I heard I just was not okay with, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to know where we stand on this ending student debt piece, because it's something that matters to my students, it's something that matters to me, and I know that for a moment our president was heading one direction and then it's kind of sitting there in the middle of nowhere. So I'd like to know where you all stand on this idea.
Anyone?
Well, the bottom line is, you know, if somebody's going to get an education, for example, when I got my bachelor's degree, I more or less was signing on the line saying, hey, I'm going to be responsible for these debts. Now, I did
17.
receive an academic scholarship, quite frankly, for all 4 years. It didn't pay for my whole education by any stretch. I borrowed money. I did get some grants, and I came from a large family of 8 children, and so, you know, it was maybe a little easier to get grants with that many, but the bottom line was there's still the thousands of dollars of debts that I incurred that I agreed to pay. I
As a
paid
child,
them.
yep.
It may be tough, but I did pay them, and in my case, I married into debt. My wife had even more debt than I did, and so while she decided, she's a school teacher, and but she decided to stay home with our children, and so for years we paid on her education as well. So I inherited her Mercury Bobcat, and I also inherited her student debt. not inherited, but
Understood.
I got to use a Mercury Bobcat.
Thank you.
So the reality is it costs a lot more to get an education now. And Bruce, I'm not sure what year you graduated from college, but if you go through the numbers, it costs a student a lot more, and they are incurring a lot more debt from all segments of society if you choose to go to college. I co-authored a bill. Anyway, the bill is to say, if this does go through, and you're right, it's sitting out there somewhere, so I don't know the current state right now, but if it does pass, that my bill says that be not taxed. So if you're a college student and you get $10,000 relief, we do not pay Indiana taxes on that.
That's
Again, the whole purpose of this
Right.
is to get money back in these college kids' pocket, which they are going to spend in our economy anyway.
You know, I'm very concerned the cost of education, higher education continues to go up and seems to be no limits. It's interesting here in Indiana, I think Purdue announced this week, this is their 12th year that they're holding tuition solid. And how can some universities do it while others seem to be spending as running amok and costs to students? You know, I've got mixed feelings on the debt because part of me, you know, I'm a person who had to take on a lot of debt to get through college and work through 3 jobs. And I think that helped me build character to be a better adult because I had to sign on the dotted line and obligate and then pay it back. I think there's a value to that, but I do have, you know, so I'm conflicted, I guess is the best way to say it.
Respect that.
Valerie, thanks for your comment. And I was fortunate to have a full ride scholarship for 5 years. So but I tell you what, my son and daughter did not when they went to Purdue. And so I had to pay for that. With my daughter, she went to pharmacy school, and I said, I'll pay for 4 years, and after that, you pay the rest. And she did. And pharmacists, they make good money when they come out of that program, whether it's, you know, Purdue or whether it's Butler. But anyway, it's how should taxpayers pay for that? You know, when somebody's going to go to Purdue or Butler or Earlham College or Rose-Hulman. 32 years ago, the highest in the state of Indiana, the school that was had the highest tuition, and back in 1991, because I had a booklet on it, was Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. $16,003 is what it was. DePaul and Greencastle was up there, 13,000 plus. Notre Dame was about 12 or so. But it has really, really gone out of control in the last several years, I feel, as far as the tuition that we have. So it's just, how do we control that? Those escalating costs that schools are charging. And so it's an issue that we'll continue to discuss, but appreciate your thoughts on that, and thank you for bringing that to us.
Well, I appreciate something you said on the end, and I'm going to step down, but you mentioned that you paid for the first 4, and then your daughter went on, moved on, and she took care of the rest. I think you made a point for me, and I'll just end on that, and that is, I don't think that a 17 or 18-year-old is prepared to sign on that dotted line that he mentioned. I think by the time she hit that 4 years, then she was prepared. And I think that it's a lot to do with why we're talking about ending student debt and NAACP. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we are finished with our public comment portion of this. We are so grateful for everybody to be able to come through. We've got to cut it off right here. I didn't look because we want to have time for everybody to do the meet and greet. Thank you so much for the public discourse. This is always wonderful to be able to do this. We will meet you again at our next session. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday.